Good evening and welcome to tonight's budgeting breakout session. Tonight we're going to discuss the early learning breakout session. My name is Kristen Bell and I am the Director of Budget here at Tacoma School District and the moderator for today's session. I'd like to share a few things about how things will go tonight. First, we will hear from Director Bonbright and then we'll open up the floor to our community members to ask questions of our panel. Before we begin, I'd like to highlight that we are recording this session. If you'd prefer not to be on camera during the recording, feel free to turn it off by clicking on the camera icon at the top of your screen highlighted here in red. I'd also like to ask that everyone remain on mute until it's your turn to speak or ask questions. You can do this by clicking on the microphone button at the top of your screen highlighted here in purple. I'll go over how to ask questions in a few moments, and if you are joining us by phone, your features may look a little different. Next, I'd like to welcome Director Elizabeth Bonbright, who will introduce you to our esteemed panelists and share information about the Early Learning Strategic Plan goal. Elizabeth?
Well, thank you, Kristen. Good evening. I'm Elizabeth Bonbright, and I'm the Vice President of the Tacoma School Board. I'd like to take a moment to introduce the panelists who will be joining us this evening. We have Zeke Edmond, who's the Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, and we have Krista Erlin, who's the Director of School Programs. For this session, we will be focusing on the Strategic Plan Goal number 3, Early Learning. This goal states, quote, "We will focus on early assessment and intervention at the pre-K through third grade levels to ensure academic success," unquote. As we strive to accomplish this goal, we recognize as a system that early learning is a conduit to early interventions and developmental screening for our youngest learners to prepare them for success in kindergarten and beyond. Our approach remains not only on research-based methods and strategies for early learners, but also on the expertise and determination of our dedicated teachers and staff. The staff continue to focus and monitor data while using our benchmarks to ensure that we are on track with our work. To tie it back to the budget presentation tonight, our budget process, called Budgeting by Priorities, aligns our resources with the district's strategic plan goals, which you heard about earlier in the presentation. The budget department has prepared additional information for you to review on the district's website that provides further detail relative to the alignment of resources by strategic plan, focus, and program. So back to Kristen.
Thank you. Okay. So now I'd like to open the floor for some questions for our panelists around the Partnership Strategic Plan goal. Some of you have already sent in questions and comments, and thank you for getting us started. For those of you that are participating online now, I'd like to offer a few tips to help us get the most out of our time together. You can ask questions in one of two ways. First, you can use the raise your hand feature in the Teams to ask a question. You just click on the symbol shown highlighted here in yellow. When called on, unmute your microphone by clicking on the symbol highlighted in purple. When you're finished, please mute yourself again. Second, you can also submit your question through the chat feature by clicking on the chat button highlighted here in blue. This will bring up a box where you can type a message and send to the group by clicking the send button highlighted here in red. I will present your question to the panel for you. If you weren't able to get your question, or if we do not have the answer for you tonight, we will write it down and provide a response through a Q&A to be published on the budget webpage next week. Again, if you are joining us by your phone, your features may look a little different. You can also submit your questions by emailing cfo@tacoma.k12.wa.us. Okay. First question we have, I'd like to just put it out there if we have any questions from our participants tonight. Okay, well, we'll go ahead and get started with some of the questions that were provided earlier this week. Director Bonbright, from your perspective, what are the policy and budget priorities for preschool this coming year?
Well, this year we are focused on increasing the number of students being served in our preschool enrollment programs. As we all know, last past school year and this one also, basically 1.5 school years, have been COVID impacted, and it really took out a lot of kids that were coming into the school system in preschool. And in 2021, this past 2021 school year, we lost a lot of students that were 3 and 4-year-olds who could have come into the program. So we want to get back out there this year and do some advertising and find as many eligible children as we can, because it's a great way for these kids to get started in their school experience and for us to be able to do early identification of some intervention issues.
Thank you, Director Bonbright. Assistant Superintendent Ed Mintz. The role of instructional coaches was different this past year with remote and hybrid learning. What will their role be with this coming school year?
Yeah, so we definitely had to leverage coaches the beginning of the year for that remote piece. However, as we started to work our way back into hybrid in the spring, we saw coaches able to join back their teams, their PLC groups, the grade level and content teams. So as we move into some of our very end of summer, early fall professional development, we'll see coaches leading a chunk of that. They'll actually start their exposure to it earlier in August, have some time to wrap their head around it so they can lead staff. And then as school starts, we are a one-to-one technology district, and where coaches come into play is that instructional practice part. How do we leverage great instruction now that every kid has a device? So there's not just how did we continue to do reading, writing, math, science, all those subjects well, but we now have an extra layer where teachers are going to be given some space in the fall to kind of practice and work their way through to proficiency. You're muted.
Thank you. Would you be able to give additional context as to what an instructional coach does and what their role is in the schools?
Certainly. So each of our buildings has one certificated teacher, and they kind of get support from the district side, but they're assigned to that site. And when you've got anywhere from 25 to 75 teachers in a building, their role is to help teachers get better at their craft, right? So I got 28 kids in my class. Maybe I'm secondary, it's a second period class, and I'm struggling to get all of them engaged in the content. Coaches can help those teachers think through strategies. Maybe it's hands-on activity. Maybe it's getting kids up and moving. Maybe it's accessing curriculum and resources in a different way. They are that backup. So when you think of a coach for a sports team, becomes kind of that same piece. They're on the sideline, sometimes literally right beside the teacher, helping with that practice.
Thank you. We do have a question in the chat box. Last spring, the preschool paras, 80% paras as well, lost their Wednesdays. We were told the money would be put in a holding bucket. When will the pre-K paras get their 5th day back, and where is the holding bucket? Director Erilyn, do you have that?
You know, I read that question a couple of times, and I was reflecting on, you know, there's I want to take this in chunks because there's several different kinds of preschool paras. I can speak directly to the paras that serve in our special education preschool programs. And for those paras, our preschool program prior to COVID was restructured. So back in, I was sitting here kind of like retracing, back in the winter of 2020, prior to the spring closure, we were working on restructuring our program to a 4-day preschool program. So when we closed down and then reopened for our last school year, the 2021 school year, we reopened well, in a couple of different formats, but ultimately we were a 4-day program that opened as a 2-day in school and a 2-day at home program. So we, as a preschool program are a 4-day-a-week program. Students come 4 days a week. So paras are also hired and staffed at 4 days a week because they're there to support the students, and the students are only there 4 days a week. There are also preschool paras in our Head Start and ECAP programs, and there are preschool paras that support our ELL programs and in our Montessori classrooms as well. And I can't speak exactly to their staffing. That is a question we'll probably have to dig deeper in and respond to later, because I don't have firsthand knowledge about what the arrangements were for those paras. I wish I could answer that with more detail, but I'm just not personally involved in that.
Okay. Lisa, if you have further questions on that, feel free to go ahead and put that in the chat, or you can unmute yourself. Either way, it's fine. The next question we have is again for Director Erilyn. Is the district budgeting for more full-day preschool programs?
Well, we are in a, the way that we plan and budget is in a kind of an annual cycle. And so at this time, we're fully staffed and with classrooms staffed for the 21-22 school year. So we have what we believe to be classrooms and staff to meet the needs of the students that we have enrolled and the students that we are projected to enroll. The places where we might need to grow if you know, there on an off chance if we had an influx of students with certain IEP needs that had mandatory classroom requirements, we may have to hire there. It wouldn't necessarily be a full day classroom, but that would be a place that we might have to grow during the course of a school year. But typically we add classrooms. If we're going to add, we add classrooms. We make those determinations in the spring, and then we add for a school year. So not at this time. At this time, we feel like we're well staffed and ready to go for the 21-22 school year.
Thank you. The following question is similar to the question we just answered, so you may have answered it, but it just worded differently. Will the district continue to expand early learning offerings this year in the 21-22 year?
Oh, yeah, I think I kind of addressed that. The place where we would need to expand is if we had more students with IEPs than we were able to serve in a classroom, and then we would definitely need to open up a classroom and serve those students. But other than that, we feel like we are within projections, and we feel like we are ready to go and should be able to serve the students that we are projecting to be enrolled.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I do. Well, Lisa, I think you were typing, but it hasn't gone through yet. If there is more to your question, just want to throw out to all of the panelists tonight. Is there anything in addition that you'd like the community to know about your programming, or just about your department and its work?
Well, since I'm still unmuted, I will just, I'm happy to take a moment just to recruit. You know, we have in our peer inclusion program, 50% of the seats in our program, 50% of the students are typically developing peers. And those are places where we offer seats to students. And sometimes people don't realize that our programs are not entirely made up or reserved for students with IEPs, but we are really a very well-balanced program. And so there's lots of opportunities for peers to participate in our programs. Those programs are taught by fully credentialed teachers and staffed with highly skilled paras as well. And we have them in many of our schools, and we have an AM/PM program. And we have opportunities and we have seats available for peers in many of our programs right now. And so please, if you're interested in a preschool program for your student, please consider our peer program. There are not limitations on income for those programs. And so you can look on our enrollment page and fill out an application, And then we look through those and we look at what the best match is. And sometimes those are a good option for folks who don't fit into the criteria for Head Start or ECAP, but we still have a program for you, and we'd be excited to have your little one in our classrooms. So, okay, that's my commercial for today. I will mute myself now.
Assistant Director or Superintendent Edmond, do you have any additional words?
No, I think I'd really just piggyback on what Rosalind had spoke to earlier around that constant question of why. What are we doing? What is our evidence? How do we get better? Even meeting with my team today, as the office rose a little over 80 degrees, we were still asking that question, whether it's our instructional coaching, our professional development, the programs we offer. We dug into our advanced placement courses today and dual credit. So at that high school level as well, we're constantly unpacking how do we make sure we're giving that access for all kids, and then what kids are we missing that we can go out and grab and encourage to take on more rigorous courses. And that same thing goes, as Krista described, in the preschool programs, looking for those families that are excited to engage with us. We're happy to have a conversation, get you enrolled, school level. So we won't stop asking those questions for sure.
Okay, thank you. Director Bombright?
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to the fact that our pre-K programs, our early learning programs, are an integral part of all the work that we do, and it's very family-centric in the sense that most of our little ones, 3 and 4-year-olds, well, a lot of them have siblings somewhere else in the Tacoma Public School system, and so we really, it really is a family-focused, family-supportive program. And just like everything else we do, we don't do it in isolation. It is part of the bigger picture and the holistic approach, which Assistant Superintendent Edmonds was just talking about, how important it is. When you're doing academic excellence, it starts with the beginning early learning. It starts at birth. It starts prenatally, actually. But I think mostly it's really important that these kids get the best step forward and join their peers in the in kindergarten and are ready to succeed. And just know that we take every child where they are when they come to us, and we find the best pathway forward to success. And we do that in partnership with not just within Tacoma Public Schools, but with all the support systems we have in our wonderfully community that is rich in talent and support and commitment to support our families and the work that we all do to improve the education for all children across the board.
Well, thank you, Director Bombright, and our panelists, and to everyone who joined and submitted their questions on this early learning strategic plan goal. To learn more about the proposed 21-22 budget, please visit tacomaschools.org. And if you have any other questions, feel free to submit. Otherwise, have a good evening.